Welcome back to Missing. I am Tim here today with Lance. Lance, how are you today?
I'm doing great today, Tim. I hope all the listeners out there are doing just as great. Once again, we have this really unique opportunity to present a conversation to our listeners that features a follow-up to a prior conversation that had family members on, representing a missing individual. And this one is the law enforcement angle. So whenever we get the opportunity to do this, we like to capitalize on it so we can get a full picture.
And today our guest is Chief Paul Logan of the Grays Harbor Sheriff's Department out there in Washington State. And we really appreciate him coming on and telling us about Oakley Carlson's disappearance and the case from their perspective. And a big shout out to Shayna and Tates at Light the Way Missing. You can find out what they're up to at lightthewaymissing.com. They introduced us to Chief Logan as well as Jamie Jo Hiles. And again, this is part 2 of our coverage on Oakley Carlson's case. If you'd like to hear part 1, we highly recommend checking that out. That was with Oakley's foster mom, Jamie Jo.
And anyone with information about the disappearance of Oakley Carlson is asked to call 911 or the Grays Harbor, Washington Sheriff's Department at 360-533-8765. And if you have credible information leading to the discovery whereabouts of Oakley Carlson, the reward on that is up to around $100,000 now. And if you do have information about Oakley's disappearance and you're concerned about calling in, it's been restated numerous times that any prior offenses that are unrelated to Oakley's disappearance will not be recognized during that call. They just want information about Oakley.
Okay, everybody, we're going to break quick for commercial here, and we'll be right back with Chief Paul Logan. Chief Paul Logan, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. We never want to miss the opportunity to speak with someone in law enforcement, someone like yourself who's connected really closely to such a tragic story. But before we get to that, can you let the audience know a little bit about yourself, like your background? You are chief. Where are you the chief? And has law enforcement always been in your family? How did you get into this?
I work for Grays Harbor County Sheriff's Office. I'm the Special Services Chief now, which entails supervision of the investigations unit, evidence, sex offender registrations, and a few other things. I've been in this spot. I was appointed in January of this year. Prior to that, I was the detective sergeant and a detective prior to that. You know, I guess my law enforcement career started 20 plus years ago in the Yakima Valley and just kind of progressed over to here. And I was the first in my family to go into law enforcement, and it's an interesting profession.
And you said you're the Special Services Chief, and that is dealing with, you said, registering sex offenders and I guess crimes of that nature. What was it about that drew you to it?
I guess it was kind of the natural progression from where I was as the detective, then the detective sergeant, and then the Special Services Chief. Also, it's the next step above detective sergeant as far as supervising the investigations division. There's a few more other things that are thrown in there, like sex offender evidence and some other divisions that I also supervise. But the main job, other than also civil, the civil side of the sheriff's office. But the main pull for me was to still be a part of the investigations division.
Can you tell us a little bit about the community?
Sure. Grays Harbor County, it's a very large county as far as square miles, not large in relation to population. We'll have 80,000 is the population approximately for the county. Most of those live in the cities, Aberdeen, Oakville, Montesano, but basically from Olympia, the capital of Washington State, all the way up to the coast, and then kind of north-south for quite a ways. But it's mostly rural, mostly timber, a lot of open spaces, fishing, hunting, hiking, a lot of outdoors is kind of the central of the county.
And how long have you been working on Oakley Carlson's case?
I've been working on the Oakley Carlson case since about 11, 11:30 on December 6th, 2021.
And you remember the time on that. Is that something that stands out to you because of all of these tragic details, her age? What is it about the time? Why is that resonating with you?
Well, I guess the way it came in, we had a little bit of knowledge that there might be an issue when a citizen contacted one of my detectives after hours, asking him what she should do. Reference a welfare check on a child that went to her school. He gave her some ideas, some instructions, since the original welfare check was outside of our county, how to report that. The following morning, he came through our office and he had to go to training, but for some reason, the details, I guess, bothered him a little bit, or he was a little bit concerned. Something just put him off with this one. So he had a meeting with all of us in the detectives division, said, "Hey, I got a call about this girl, Oakley Carlson, yesterday. This is what I told the RP to do, but I got to go to training. So if something comes up later, I just wanted you guys to be aware." So he kind of put us on notice that there might be something more to this. And honestly, I think it was just good instincts on his part. The actual information, it was not to the point that we would start something significant at that point. Again, it's just a welfare check at that point, but he thought enough to come talk to us. And by about 11:30, we had coordinated with the neighboring jurisdiction that had done the welfare check, and they'd contacted the parents, Jordan Bowers and Andrew Carlson. The responses that they gave them let us know that, yeah, there's something more here than just somebody checking on the welfare. So that's when kind of everyone here, all the detectives, headed towards Oakville and began working on the case.
That's really remarkable. That's amazing that the instincts took over like that. And I'm curious how often that happens, where someone is contacted, you said, after hours. So that shows sort of the urgency in the situation, right?
Yeah, yes, I would say definitely she was bothered by what she by the situation and wanted to find out how to report it. I would also say it has a lot to do with our, my detectives and the deputies, their relationships with the people in the county. So she felt comfortable calling him at home. She knows who he is. She knows where he works, and she felt comfortable calling him at home and asking him for some advice. And he gave her some good instructions on what to do the next day, but to kind of get the ball rolling.
And can you share a little bit more about what that's like inside your department when there's a story like that? I mean, it's not, I'm sure it's not like you'd investigate differently, but is there a different sense of urgency when there's a child involved?
Always. It depends on the age of the child, depends on the circumstances. It depends on, who the child is supposed to be with. All the information that comes in, you have to take them all case by case basis. But whenever you're talking about a child who, for the most part, cannot defend themselves, can't get themselves out of a dangerous situation, they can't leave, there's a lot of things an adult can do that a child can't. So when we get a report of a smaller child that's in danger, it's obviously of a different priority, just because they're in the group that needs help the most.
I've done a total of 3 welfare checks in my life for individuals, and each one of them I was so concerned that I was doing the wrong thing because I didn't want to be like intrusive, or I didn't want to, violate anyone's privacy. And I'm trying to ask because I know you can't give certain information, but the information that this woman gave, I mean, how significant was it where she took it upon herself to call in a wellness check? And without getting, if you want to get specific, however you feel comfortable answering that, I'm just thinking about my past experience and how much it took for me to say, okay, this needs to happen.
Sure. And how it began is that she, Oakley's sister, had been spending the night with her and her daughter, just kind of a sleepover. And Oakley's sister had made a comment that she found concerning. That, with the fact that in the small community, she had been over to the Bowers Carlson residence a few times in the previous months, had not seen Oakley. She kind of put all of that together to get her to the point where, yeah, I'm worried about this. Somebody needs to figure out what's going on. We were, I guess, in the same respect, I think it's important not to forget that this was in the midst of COVID. A lot of things were shut down. This is a rural community, so the house doesn't have any neighbors that are in close proximity. You add COVID, nobody's going to school. People are staying in their homes. It was kind of the perfect storm to have this kind of happening and not having those normal interactions at the post office, at the grocery store, at the school, pick up, drop off, that kind of stuff.
Can you tell us when the last time Oakley was seen was?
A big part of our investigation since December 6th, was backtracking to find out when the last credible time that someone other than the parents had seen Oakley. And we were able to backtrack back to February 10th of 2021 was the last time we had somebody from outside the house who had put eyes on Oakley and knew that she was there and that she was okay.
And upon visiting Oakley's parents, Jordan Bowers and Andrew Carlson, upon visiting their residence for the first time, what was it, again, with as many details as you feel comfortable explaining, what was it about their behavior, about the residents that set off even more red flags?
Well, without getting into any specifics of what we found there and kind of the direction we took after that, I would say it was the lack of concern, lack of assistance. I'm a father. Every detective that I have are all fathers, parents. And I think most people have had that experience at a grocery store where your child might, be right next to you, and then they kind of wander around the corner looking at the next shiny thing. You turn around looking for them, and they're gone. And you have that panicky feeling as you're running around a grocery store. And usually the child's very close. But when you find them, you just have that initial panic response. I didn't see that from either Jordan Bowers or Andrew Carlson. There was no urgency. There was no panic. There was there was just no worry, I guess, about the location of the child, and no panic in needing to find her, which I found very concerning.
At that time, Oakley had been missing for months, and Andrew and Jordan, they were not the people to report her missing. Is that right?
Correct. Like I said, based on our investigation, the last time we have somebody who's seen Oakley was in February that we've been able to document. Oakley was not reported missing until after the welfare check, and even during the welfare check, she did not. They didn't claim that she was missing. It was after that when they were headed back out to the house from the hotel that they were in, where she was reported at that point.
And do Bowers and Carlson have any legal issues? Were they arrested previously? Anything that was concerning on that end?
Well, I'd say both of them have history. I'm not going to really go into specifics on their history. As a result of them being arrested and an investigation at this point, they were both charged with assault of their other children based on methamphetamine being used in the home, and some different things that occurred there. So they were both subsequently charged with that, and both ended up accepting guilty pleas and serving sentences for that.
And you brought up the methamphetamine. Is that an issue that's in the area that is escalating, or is it de-escalating, or what's the status?
It's everywhere. I don't know if it's increasing. I know it's definitely not decreasing. In Washington State, there has been some things in the last few years that made it, because of a Supreme Court ruling that we had several years ago, the Blake decision. It was simple possession. It took the simple possession of narcotics off of the table, so you couldn't be arrested for possession of methamphetamine, heroin, fentanyl. Since then, it's been changed slightly to where I think it's a misdemeanor, or might even be a gross misdemeanor now, with the suggestion that there's treatment, and they have a year to do treatment. So there's really no charges on it as long as they go to treatment or start the process. So needless to say, it's a huge problem in the county.
What was the line of thinking behind that? You said it's the Blake decision?
It was the Blake decision. And I believe the defense was that the defendant had stated upon arrest that the pants that she was wearing were not hers, that she bought them from Goodwill or or a yard sale or something to that effect. And she was in possession of methamphetamine, heroin, something in her pocket. And they later determined that, because the pants were not hers, were not later proven to be hers, even though she was wearing them, that, constructive possession based on the way the law was written at that time was unenforceable.
Does that make it your investigation any more complicated?
I'd say it makes it more difficult whenever you're dealing with an investigation where a chunk of it occurred within the drug community. Then these are the people that you're going to need to talk to. It used to be a little easier if someone had different charges that they wanted to work off, they wanted some help with, they wanted something, to that effect. It was kind of easy for us to do that, or at least that was a good direction that we could go. We could offer help. We could offer to get rid of some charges for some information. As soon as the drug laws changed, no one is really getting arrested for the past few years, anything other than higher level possession with intent to distribute cases. So those are usually done by a drug task force and are not. Makes it more difficult for us to interact with a group of people that we need to.
Does it also make it more difficult to get information because the possible penalty isn't going to be as harsh?
Oh, definitely. There's really virtually no penalty, and they know this. So they're waiting, in some cases, instead of coming forward with information, not only this case, but other cases, they're going to hold off on anything they know until they get caught for a burglary or a serious assault or something else, and try to use whatever information they have to deal out of that instead of the drug charges, because they don't need it anymore.
And you said that Carlson and Bowers have both been, are they currently serving time right now?
Andrew Carlson, he served and was released, and Jordan Bowers ended up serving her sentence, and then she was subsequently arrested again upon her release from prison by us, because again, during the process of this case, it has caused us, just due to we're talking about a missing child, no stone unturned. We ended up uncovering some additional crimes that Jordan Bowers had committed. So we prepared an additional charging package and gave that to the prosecutor who charged him. And she's just recently has gone to, I think last month, has gone back to Purdy to start serving her prison sentence on the newer charges.
And how long is that sentence?
Without good time and any other easements that they would give by policy, I think it was 36 months.
I see. So that probably isn't a long enough period of time to offer some sort of break if she were to give up information on Oakley?
Probably not long enough of an incentive. No, I definitely would if she wanted to, but I doubt the 36 months is an enticement for her to do so.
Were there any other complications in your investigation that you can tell us about?
Well, I think right off the bat, the complication was time and how long it had been since Oakley had been seen. We had to basically try to recreate her life for months and months, trying to figure out where she'd gone, and there really wasn't much there. With an adult, you have a pattern of life. Most adults are going to go to the store. They're going to go get gas at the same gas station. They're going to go to work. They're going to have this pattern of things. Even school children have this pattern of life. So you can go back and find out when exactly that pattern of life was disrupted. And it gives you, it's usually a little easier to narrow in on a specific point in time. In this case, because the family lived in such a remote location, because of COVID, nobody visited, because Oakley was not in school yet. There just really was not all of these other little things that we could use to pin down this pattern of life. So that was and is still a difficulty that we're trying to overcome.
It sounds like impossible when you hear it like that, because if you're looking for an adult, they've already established, like you said, a pattern of life. Like this is a little girl who was only at the mercy of the adults around her.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's I'd never use the word impossible because we've spent a lot of time doing it, and we continue to work on it, but it's absolutely difficult. A lot of it is piecing together the parents' lives, piecing together the other children's lives. other extraneous things that have happened around their lives. But we're still working on it.
There's been a history, I guess we'll say, alleged abuse of the other children and of Oakley. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, the abuse that I know of, and that I could talk about, is the chemical abuse, which was the initial charge that they were charged with. And that was a result of DSHS here. Once the children were taken into state custody, they did hair follicle tests. The hair follicle tests showed levels of methamphetamine ingestion in the children. That was what prompted those charges.
Does that mean they consume it or are just in close proximity?
It could be either or. I know that the levels, I was told, by the doctor, the levels were at a consumption level, just based on how many nanograms were in the test. But at the same time, they couldn't 100% say it was usage. It could have been an incredible amount of being in the same room while it's being consumed.
And how long is the sentence for something like that if someone's convicted of that?
It depends. It depends on what their history is. Someone without any criminal history is in Washington State, and I would assume it's the same for most states. Is our offenders have offender scores. So if you have a certain number of felony convictions, then your score goes up. The higher your score is, the longer your sentence is going to be on any crime. Jordan Bowers received 20 months for her sentence, and I believe Andrew Carlson received 12 months for his, again, because he had less of a criminal history.
And then what happens to the child after the fact? Are they put into a form of rehab?
They're provided services. They're still wards of the state, and they're provided services, physical, emotional, psychological services with the state.
And I guess time to dry out in jail or prison hasn't changed anything as far as information that Oakley's parents are providing.
No, they have not provided any substantive information about Oakley's whereabouts since the first day.
And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program. And have you conducted searches for Oakley?
We have. I'm not sure off the top of my head how many search warrants we've written in this case for different electronic files, whether it be cell phone records, location records, different apps on phones, banks, that kind of stuff. But we've also done multiple searches on the property, the surrounding property, other properties of note, hundreds and hundreds of searchers' hours, cadaver dogs, drones, flyovers. Quite a bit.
And nothing has been found of significance, or is there a certain area that keeps popping up for some reason?
Well, again, just because of the rural nature of where they lived in the surrounding property, no matter how, unfortunately, no matter how much time we put into this type of search and this kind of property, you can never get to the point where you're 100% convinced that there's nothing there. We're dealing with a lot of timber, a lot of brush land where it's so thick that you can hardly crawl through it, or you can't crawl through it, cliffs, waterways, that kind of stuff. So it's definitely not your open field type of searching. That being said, I think what we've done, I can reasonably say that unless something comes up, I think that the areas that we've searched have been searched as good as they can be. There's always the desire to search more, but at this point, we need a reason to start another search in a location or in a certain spot.
And do you ever give any advice to anybody who wants to conduct an independent search if they wanted to get a group of people together to do this? What do you typically say? Well,
we have had that occur in this case. One, it's very rare, and I will usually say, don't. And it's just for the safety of the searchers. And there's different evidence requirements if something is found to preserve the evidence. Also, you're usually in these, you're dealing with private property. So where we would have a search warrant or permission from a property owner to go onto their property, and the labor and industries and insurance and everything set up ahead of time when we're doing it. Private people who are going to go search usually don't have any of that infrastructure set up. So that's why I would usually suggest not to do it. If they have a location based on specific information, I would say give us that information and so we can develop a search plan. In this case, like I said, there was a group that had reached out and said they wanted to conduct a search. They'd gotten permission to be on the land. They'd gotten assistance from the different DNR, Department of Natural Resources land that was behind there. They came up with a good plan. They did a great job as far as the infrastructure that we would normally do. But I've been a search and rescue coordinator for 9 years, and this is the first time I've ever had a group be able to do what they did. So again, I would suggest for the most part, I would say no. But at the same time, I can't stop somebody from, if they get the permissions and they want to do it. So it's kind of up to them.
And as part of your searches and subpoenaing of information, were you able to get cell phone pings and messages from the time when Oakley went missing to lead you to where to search?
I'd say as far as the electronic data that we've got, we got terabytes of data from different locations that we use in the FBI CAS team, who's been working with us from the beginning. We were able to go through a lot of it and, kind of extrapolate a lot of data out from that we're still using to use follow-ups. But other than that, I'm not going to comment on any specifics that we've got out of those search warrants.
And Oakley spent time as a foster child, and during this time she seemed to be thriving and she seemed to be healthy and happy. Is there any information that you have about her foster parents, Jamie Jo and Eric, that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I don't have much information about her when she was in foster care. I know she was. Obviously, during my investigation, I wanted anything and everything from every area that I could get, and her definitely being in foster care from a very young age to where she went back into the custody of Andrew Carlson and Jordan Bowers. So I reached out early on to Jamie Jo, introduced myself, because at this point we did not know where Oakley was. So within a day, I'd reached out to Jamie Jo just to see if maybe for some reason she was back at her house or she had any information about where she was. Since that time, I've had many conversations with both Jamie Jo and Eric Hiles. They have been nothing but cooperative, with us, anything that we need them to do. As far as providing information, DNA samples from some things that Oakley had, so that I could prepare a DNA profile of Oakley to put into the national database. They're definitely dedicated to finding out what happened to her.
In your opinion, was there a part of the foster process that failed Oakley?
I would say anytime you end up with a result or a case where the child is missing, then I think there needs to be a hard evaluation of what got us to this point. I haven't spent any time digging back into what decisions were made by DSHS or anyone involved in that, honestly, because it doesn't do me any good in finding Oakley. And that's my goal. Is 100% goal every day is to find Oakley, and going back to what a department did or didn't do. While I think it's important that that's done, and if there were mistakes or things done there that someone needs to be held accountable, then that's what should be done. But it's not in my purview.
We made the introduction with you through Shayna at Light the Way Missing. Can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with her and that organization?
Absolutely. They've been very helpful in this case, and I know some other cases that I've read about their work on. Basically, just some people that really care have started this Light the Way group to advocate for the missing children. They can reach out and do some things on the private sector that we can't. There are people who don't want to talk to me because I'm law enforcement for whatever reason, but they are comfortable talking to them. And then it's one more way for me to get information from someone who might want the information eventually to get to me, but for whatever reason that they don't want to talk to me directly. Light the Way can kind of be that conduit of getting information doing some online, very good at online open source detecting. And if they find something, they let me know. But they are based out of the East Coast, but they've been here multiple times now to help where they can. And I think having the name Oakley Carlson as far and wide as it has now, including the reward of what I've been told is right around $100,000. I think that's definitely due to the work of Light the Way.
Wow. Yeah. I wanted to ask about the reward. You said $100,000, up to 100,000 or close to it?
Yeah, that's my understanding, is it's right at 100,000.
Wow. And is that a reward for information that leads to Oakley?
Correct. Leads to the location of Oakley.
In the beginning of this conversation, I just expressed our gratitude for having you on. You are law enforcement, and you are working every day on Oakley's story. How important was it for you to come on the show? I'm curious what your perspective is to say, like, this podcast is going to be important for me to be on to talk about Oakley. What's your thought process?
I guess my thought process is I don't want the name Oakley Carlson to disappear. I want it to continue for people to ask questions. At some point, there's a piece of information out there I'm convinced that somebody has that will get me to a point where I can find Oakley. I don't know what that is, obviously, but I think the more times her name is said, the more posters that are up, the more billboards that are up, the more people are talking about it. The more people that are asking, Andrew Carlson and Jordan Bowers where she is, the more people that care. And I think, coming on shows like this and getting that message out there, I think that's the important thing, to keep her name, in this case, in the forefront.
And what is next for you and your department in searching for Oakley?
Honestly, we had a detective meeting last week where we came up with kind of our next steps. We're never out of steps. There's some recanvassing, there's some re-interviews, there's some investigating and interviews on some new tips that have come in. It runs the gamut of, kind of going over some ground that's already been gone over and going over some stuff that has just come in, that we're working on. We've always got a few things out there that we're waiting for to come in. We continue to get tips here at the sheriff's office and through National Center for Missing and Exploited Children or Crime Stoppers. We get tips from all of them, and when we get those, we run them down. So that's kind of the next step, is a concerted effort for all of us to hopefully, put aside some of the other cases we're working and work again full time on this for a few days to roll through this stuff. And then, as stuff comes in, we'll continue to evaluate it and investigate it.
And do you believe that the persons responsible for Oakley's disappearance have told other people about what happened to Oakley? And if you do believe that, is there a message that you would like to convey to these people? Anyone with information?
I guess I'd say probably. Usually people don't operate in a vacuum. Human nature is we have to share something with someone. I think it alleviates the conscience somewhat, or it brings someone in and makes you feel better, or it makes you feel more comforted when you get something off your chest to someone. So I believe, between both Andrew Carlson, Jordan Bowers, anyone else connected, there has been conversations. I would say if someone out there does know, my goal is not to, disrupt someone's life. It's to find Oakley Carlson. So if they do have information, then that's where the information is going to go. It's going to go to me to find Oakley Carlson, not to try to dig into, their life or what they've got going on. I want them to come forward and say, hey, I've got this piece of information that might help you and steer me in the right direction.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Chief Paul Logan, for spending some time with us today and telling us about Oakley and your investigation into her disappearance. We really appreciate it.
You bet. Well, thank you for having me on and continuing to talk about Oakley.
And if there's anything that comes up in the case, any developments, let us know. If it's worth coming on again to talk about, if you feel like that's important, doors open.
Will do. Appreciate it.